Welcome back to Today in Atlanta Sports. It is January 24th, and I am your host, Chase Earl, joined by my co-host, Alex Lord. What a wild weekend of football we just had. And even though it might not be in Atlanta, how'd you like those games this weekend? Joe Burrow gets it done. Our boy from LSU beats the Titans, even though they got sacked 10 times, 11 times. I guess pass rush isn't that important. But yeah, he got beat around, then pulling that out. Your Packers kind of taking the L on the chin, 13-10 in what was an ugly game. I didn't get to watch a lot of that game. I only got to watch some of it. And then the two games on Sunday were just unbelievable. Matthew Stafford, our Georgia boy, getting the job done. And then that game last night was just probably the best game. The best game that I can remember. I don't know if it's the best game of all time, but 25 points in 2 minutes, that's just absolutely absurd. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. I tell you what, I got to give Josh Allen a lot of credit. I've not always been a huge fan, especially when he came out of college. I've accepted that he's great, but he might be just as good as Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, definitely. I think he proved a lot of people wrong. He'll firmly be in that top three quarterbacks every year for the rest of his career. And this Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen rivalry that we're going to have for the next decade is going to be special. It's that Tom Brady, Peyton Manning-esque rivalry that we'll see forever. Football's in good hands. For Falcons fans, it might be the last time they see Tom Brady, which probably will be happy. He's mulling retirement. I don't think he will.
Because to me, he was the front runner for the MVP about half the year, and he's probably going to finish second. I just don't see how he'd have this dramatic shift because he's always been I want to play till I'm 50. What in his life could have happened to where he's just oh, maybe it's it's definitely not his play. I don't think he looked great last year. I think the Rams just gave the Bucs opportunity after opportunity. I would say Tom probably played an average game, especially for his standards. But it wasn't his play over the course of the year suggests he's still a top tier quarterback. He's still going to have all those weapons next year. I just don't see why now all of a sudden you would just be I'm done. The Bucs are still going to have a great roster. It's hard to win in the NFL, but he's been doing it for 2 decades. So I don't buy that. I just felt but it was weird timing. I will say he's not usually the kind of guy to come out before a game or something and say a statement like that. He's always I'm focused on the game. I'm focused on the game. So it was weird timing, but I still just it would be crazy to me if Tom decided to hang it up after the season he just had.
Yeah, both reports of Tom Brady and Sean Payton mulling retirement or possibly leaving would benefit the Falcons directly. But again, I agree with you that I don't think either of them go anywhere. Tom has said that, until his play declines where he's not, playing as best as he possibly can, that's when he'll retire. And it's kind of crazy to think that he just had maybe his best season ever as a pro, as a 44-year-old.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree with you. I think he comes back.
I don't see it, but it would be great for the Falcons if somehow he was not there and Sean Payton was gone. All of a sudden, the NFC South would be like the AFC South, just 4 awful teams going at it. But we do have some baseball news, not a ton. The players are proposing a counter proposal to, I don't really know how these things go, but I can almost guarantee you no progress will be made. That's just how, until the season is on the line, I don't expect anything to happen. And when it does happen, I expect it to be 3 meetings in 3 straight days, and it'll be over. And then you'll realize, hey, this whole thing was just a big joke. There's this, they're just it's like a dick measuring contest. Who can wait longer? It's they're playing chicken. And it's they can get this done in 3 days. It's ridiculous. It's terrible for the sport. But Ken Rosenthal did report when Freddie Freeman, or when this does end, Freddie Freeman could act quickly, and so could the Braves. So we're going to have a solution to that very, very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think that as soon as this lockout ends, I think the Braves will sign Freddie immediately. We were talking about earlier, there's got to be some sort of backroom meetings going on. The MLB, any sports organization, they're schemy and they'll do anything to have a leg up to win. And I guarantee you, every single baseball club is not playing it by the rules. I wouldn't be surprised if a deal got done with Freddie, almost immediately, like you're suggesting.
Yeah, but they also said, maybe Freddie, if a team acts, very aggressively towards Freeman, with the way the Braves have kind of sat back and let him, take all of his options in, a lot of teams are going to be aggressive once this lockout ends. They're going to have money. They're not going to have a lot of time. If someone makes a big push for Freeman, he could say, hey, I'm going to take that top dollar because there's leverage here. If the Braves lose out on Freddie Freeman, they might look at Matt Olson. But now the A's in a potential hypothetical trade, they have all the leverage in the world to demand whatever they want because they know the Braves don't have a first baseman in their organization that can play Major League first base. Like they have no choice but to either make a trade or sign Anthony Rizzo. So all their leverage is gone if Freeman signs elsewhere. And in the vice versa, the leverage, if the Braves act first and sign Rizzo or trade for Matt Olson, Freddie Freeman loses one of his biggest suitors in this bidding war that he's trying to create to get the most money. So I definitely think, Rosenthal has a good point. I'm still like you said, I hope Freddie resigns. It should happen quickly. It shouldn't have never gotten to this point. But the fact that it has gotten to this point, like I'm not going to say I'm 50-50, but like I'm closer to like 60-40 than I've ever been on Freeman returning. I'm not as sold as I was. I just think there's something weird going on. This should have already happened. It should have happened last off a season. I just think there's a disconnect between the two sides, and the Braves clearly don't seem interested in like meeting Freeman's demands. So if someone comes out there and gives him a quick offer, it would be smart for Freeman not to go back to the Braves and say, hey, this is what the offered me. Maybe just sign right there, which would be an unfortunate ending to a great career in Atlanta.
Yeah, it makes sense to me to sign him. I think the disconnect is the years. It's the years on the contract, correct?
Yeah, I mean, from everything that's been reported, it's that 6th year, which would take him to his age 38 season. So that's what it is.
But we're gonna have the universal DH. If Freddie's play declines in that 5th and 6th year, having him in that universal DH role, I mean, that makes sense to me. Obviously, can't really predict how much his play is going to fall off, but if it seems to me his play style is the type that could go into that age 38 season. I'm not sure what the big deal is about giving him that 6th year. Anthopoulos seems, steadfast on not signing him to that 6th year, which seems crazy to me. There has to be more.
I imagine it's just kind of looking down the road, like thinking like a GM here. When you get to the years 2026, 2027, that's when you're talking about trying to re-sign Austin Riley, trying to re-sign Ronald Acuna, trying to re-sign Ozzie Albies. Like you don't want a 37-year-old, 38-year-old declining Freddie Freeman taking up $35 million on your books when you have those guys coming up. I imagine that's what makes the most sense. A 5-year deal, none of those guys become free agents, but they all are free agent that 6th year. So I imagine that's a big part of it. Ronald Acuna is, I think, like 8 years away, but still you have to think about all of this. When you have Ozzie, Ronald, I think Riley's the first one up in 2026, then 2027, you have Ozzie, 2028, you have Acuna. So I imagine that's kind of like the dilemma. And then you also have Fried and Anderson and other guys. Like when you get to that 2026 threshold, I know people were laughing about me doing my opening day roster predictions, but the reason I stopped after 2026 is because one, it's 5 years away. Like that's a good round number, but it gets crazy after that. Like everyone's a free agent. Like, so the Braves are going to have to make a lot of critical decisions at that point. And the last thing they need is 38-year-old Freddie hitting 250 with like 20 homers, taking up 35 millions on the books. So I understand that's definitely, I think, what it has a lot to do with.
The championship window is wide open. You just said it. That 5-year window, championship window with all those key guys under contract is key. And to play it conservative, with somebody like Freddie Freeman, who's going to be such an integral piece for at least 4 years, 4 more years, is just, it's asinine. I mean, Anthopoulos obviously is in this position because he's great at what he does. And we're just sitting on the outside, just, talking about what we are. But it seems to me going with this conservative approach is just, it's going to hurt the Braves. There's no sense in doing it. They've got plenty of money. Something just came out about Liberty Media being the most valuable sports company in the world.
F1 and the Braves.
I mean, it seems like now is the time. You can even think of it as an investment in terms of Liberty Media, invest in Freddie Freeman, and it's, it's likely the Braves will at least get back to one.
It is going to pay off. I think it's one of those things where, yeah, I mean, to be honest, like, I don't even want to comment on the budget constraints, even though, like, we're run by $1 billion corporation. Like, it just doesn't matter. We have them. They're going to be there. Like, they shouldn't be there, but we have them. So we're dealing, Alex Anthopoulos is dealing with the hand he's dealt. It's that old kind of like battle between, do you want to compete and be a championship favorite for the next 5 years? Or do you want to, try to make this go for 15 to 20 years? See, like the Braves of the 90s, they won that one World Series and they were great for, 15 years, winning 14 straight division titles, but they only won one title. If you re-sign Freddie Freeman and you risk, maybe this all blowing up in 2027, you're going to be championship favorites, guaranteed for 5 years. And you'll probably win at least one more, maybe two more, maybe even more than that. But you'll be championship favorites with a great chance to win. So it's kind of like, do you want this whole thing to drag out? Or do you want, to win now over this next 5 year period? And I think that's what the Braves. Hopefully, they sign a 5 year deal. That would be awesome for the Braves, and Freeman would still get paid. But I think this is headed towards a 6 year deal, and the Braves are eventually going to have to give in. So moving on to the Hawks, who now have won 4 straight. Feels crazy. It feels like we were ready to just blow this up a week ago, but they won 4 straight. They're still kind of in these rumor mills with Ben Simmons, and reportedly Shams Charania said that 76ers have asked for John Collins' multiple first and taking on Tobias Harris's contract for Ben Simmons. I'm kind of torn on this because I've always thought Ben Simmons would be a good fit, but I'm also not ready to go all in, and I do really like John Collins. So it's like it would suck to play the 76ers in the playoffs and have John Collins and Joel Embiid posterizing us their way to like a 7-game victory, and we have Ben Simmons on the other side. Like, that would just be the most disgusting feeling ever. But I do think Ben Simmons could be a good fit in Atlanta, and I still think, like, I mean, God, if the dude could ever make a free throw, he'd be one of the best players in the league. He doesn't even have to make threes. If he makes free throws, he'll be one of the best players in the league.
Yeah, I want to talk about more of the addition by subtraction, and it correlates into this conversation about trading of Cam Reddish. We got rid of him. He's now, reports are surfacing that he might not even crack the Knicks rotation. And now we're playing much better. Obviously, we got DeAndre Hunter back in that time as well. I don't think it's a coincidence that we're going on this 4-game win streak with DeAndre Hunter back in the lineup. And I think Travis Slink is seeing exactly what he wanted to with this, little runway, that, as he described it before the trade deadline, to see what he really has. And the Hawks are showing him and showing us that they're still a playoff team as they're constructed right now. As they're constructed, they can make the playoffs. Whether they can win a championship is another conversation. I say no, probably not. But Schlink is seeing exactly what he needs to see. I mean, the Hawks just beat the Heat and the Hornets, who are both teams. The Heat are squarely in the playoff picture, and the Hornets are battling for it. And I think that
first place in the East right now. I didn't even really realize that, but they're in first place in the East.
Wow, I didn't either.
Yeah, they're 30-17. The Bucks have kind of been struggling, but obviously they're NBA champions, still at the top of the East. Yeah, so I mean, some big wins for the Hawks. They beat a bunch of playoff teams, and they did it like pretty convincingly for the most part. Trae Young looked good. DeAndre Hunter, I mean, having him back, there's a reason why Solomon Hill would talk about him as the piece that could lead them to a championship. So he's been critical. OO is playing great. Capella's back. They're finally starting to get healthy. I do think this Hawks team could make a run in the Eastern Conference, maybe back to the Eastern Conference Finals. Again, I think championship right now is just short-sighted. I mean, I just don't, unless there's a bunch of injuries again, I don't see that happening. But I think they can get just as far last year and maybe give the Bucks a better run if they stay healthy or something like that. But I mean, if they meet up with the Warriors the way they're constructed, I don't see there any way they can win. Like, even maybe a team like the Suns are going to be tough. So a lot of teams out west that could beat them. So I think the big thing is just rounding out this roster, finding defensive-minded, veteran, experienced players to kind of help with this group. I think the young talent is there. If they get a Ben Simmons, listen, I'm all about boldness. I'd love to see it. I'd be excited to see how it worked out. It'd be fun to go to games. The Hawks would be electric. But it just seems like, but I mean, Tobias Harris too. I mean, he's kind of nice. Like, even though he's like overpaid, like he's still a solid piece. Like, if that trade happened, I'm definitely not upset. Let's put it that way. I'm definitely not upset. I think they could work it out, but you'd have about 40 games to figure out some chemistry. I think the Hawks will make the playoffs. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind they'll make the playoffs. They've started to figure some things out. I think the addition by subtraction is a great point. Reddish, I mean, he was the worst on the team in plus minus. Now, some of that had to do with him playing on a bench that was often, shredded with injuries, but still the worst on the team in plus minus. I never understood the love affair because I felt like I started the love affair on Hawks Twitter about 3 years ago. And when you've been doing what these people were doing like for the last 6 months, like it's like they just realized Cam Reddish had some talent. I'm like, I've been telling you this for 3 years, but after I've seen it for 3 years and there's no significant improvement, like I'm done with that. Like I don't need to be I don't need to be told that he's going to be great, man. We've been saying that for 3 years. I've been on this train. He's just not great. And then you mentioned the locker room presence, the having to deal with that, him wanting out. Even people said it was awkward. So that all that stuff matters. So I think getting Hunter back, moving on from the Reddish debacle, I definitely think that plays a factor. And I think this Hawks team has a good chance to go on a win streak. They play some winnable games at home. I know they've been terrible at home, but Kings, Boston, Lakers, and then they get a nice matchup on TNT with the Suns to end it up. It would be awesome to have a 7-game winning streak going into that national TV game against the Suns at home. I'd definitely go to that one.
Yeah, I think that you nailed it right there. The Hawks are right there in the playoffs. Although it might not be it right now, they're clearly going on a win streak, and I think it's here to stay. Though that 7 games might be difficult, there should be no excuse heading into that game at least 6-1 in this little 7-game stretch, or at 5-2 at the very least.
Well, they're already 4-0, so.
Yeah, but I mean, the Lakers are always, LeBron. I'm a firm believer in the Lakers can turn it on whenever they want. Although they're struggling.
Not without Anthony Davis. Like LeBron can win you a game. Like you're never going to count him out. But like without Anthony Davis, that team is booty. That team is booty. Trust me. From a guy who watches all these games because I bet on them, they are free cash. Especially when they play bad teams. They're actually good against like good teams because I feel like they kind of turn it on and know they need to play well. But like it's like the games where they play like the Pacers. It's just like they go and get waxed by the Pacers at home. You're just like, how does this happen?
Yeah, my whole point is basically that the Hawks really have no excuse not to be, they're in control of their own destiny, and there is no reason why they can't find themselves in the playoff picture by the trade deadline. They should be at least the 8th seed, 7th seed.
I think there's a good chance that we're sitting here next Monday recording this show, and the Hawks are in the top 10 seed or in the top, maybe even 8 seeds, but they'll definitely be officially in the playoffs picture by this time next week. There's no doubt in my mind. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, it definitely, feels good for Hawks fans to, see Reddish go and do the exact same thing he's been doing in New York while the Hawks are obviously getting better without him. It's really got to confirm all the suspicions that Schlink had. I mean, clearly Reddish wanted out. He wasn't going to get what he wanted in Atlanta, and it might not look like he's going to get it in New York either. And Atlanta's the benefactors of all that. We get a 1st-round pick. Kevin Knox seems to be he's got a role on this team.
Yeah, I mean, while Bogey's out. Yeah, I'm just going to wrap it up with I will say Kevin Knox, I legitimately think he could be a more significant contributor than Cam Reddish. Like, I don't think he's probably not going to have a role once everyone's healthy because Delon Wright's been playing well. Lou's been playing a little bit better. Bogey comes back. Like, he'll definitely be relegated to like a 3rd string. But you know how the injuries happen, especially with this team. Like, we'll need him at some point. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was just like Reddish was worse defensively. He was still inefficient offensively. Like, I think Knox could be, with Trae Young as his point guard, be a more efficient player than Reddish, not turn the ball over, better, more consistent 3-point shooter, and probably play as good or if not better defense. So I don't even really think it's that, just those 2 players straight up. I don't really think it's that big of a downgrade. I mean, obviously Reddish had his highs that like Knox has not really had in the NBA, but he doesn't have these ridiculous lows where it's like, what are you doing, Cam? You're 2 for 13 and you're chucking up mid-range jumpers down 15. Like, come on. So like, I think those guys are more closer, and they're both 22. Like, it's not like Knox is like 27 and completely failed out of the NBA. Like, he's just been in the league a little bit longer. So I think those guys are closer than people want to say. And then you get a 1st-round pick that's probably right now it's going to be a 1st-round pick this year because Charlotte's, I think, the 7th seed or whatever. So Yeah, I think Schlenk said 90% chance that turns into a first round pick. So, yeah, that wraps it up for our show.